Kia ora koutou. Piki mai, kaki mai, no mai, haere mai. Welcome to the Wellington Regional Waste Management and Minimisation Plan Joint Committee. It's now open. Members are reminded that this meeting is being live streamed. Please use your microphones. It's got a button on there. Push it once to go, push it once for no. Let us move on to our karakia, which is on the screen. Toru whā. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta. Kia mā tātara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. Kia ora koutou. We have not received any apologies from members. However, I want to acknowledge all those who are calling in today's meeting. Thank you. I think it's probably the most brilliant choice considering how inclement the weather is. But to also those who came and braved themselves to be here, ka nohi kite, thank you as well. Public forum, we have had no requests to speak, so we'll move on to conflict of interest. I call for any conflicts of interest that need to be declared. There are none. There are none. There are no items of extraordinary business. And so we will move on to the minutes. We are asked to confirm the minutes of the Wellington Regional Waste Minimisation, Management and Minimisation Plan Joint Committee held on the 1st of December last year. Someone's had their hand up?
Yes, I did. Yes, I just want to note that my apologies weren't tendered because I didn't actually know about the meeting. However, I'm aware of all the ongoing dates now.
This is in regards to the amendment for the minutes of the December meeting. Is that right, Councillor Free?
Yes, I note that I'm not an apology or a present.
Yeah.
But I just want to make it clear that I didn't actually know about the meeting.
Yeah. Also, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Then with that and noting that, I'm going to move that the motion the minutes as a true and accurate record. Do I have a seconder? Councillor, oh my gosh, Mitchell. I just had Councillor. Oh, there's another hand up. Councillor Clark, or was that the seconding? Okay, we'll take Councillor Clark's hand's gone up very quickly. Let's make sure that they're the seconder, shall we? All right. I'll put the motion which has been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Those against? Abstentions? Carried. Okay. Let us now move on to reports. 7.1, Waste Management and Minimisation Plan Progress Debates. Update rather. I move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McLeod. Can I have Yvette, Steph and Jorn to come forward and speak to the report that is on notice? I have every expectation that all members of this committee have read the report in advance, so consider it as read, but this is an opportunity for our officers to give any additional commentary before we go out into questions. The floor is yours.
Kia ora koutou. This report provides an update on the region's progress against the WMMP, including an update on the major regional projects and an update on progress against the 6 local action plans. One thing to note is that the format of the local action plan reporting has been updated slightly since the last round of reporting, and this was following feedback at the September 2025 meeting. The previous format had provided a high-level update on each of the actions. However, the new format provides an update against each of the projects being carried out under the local action plans. And the aim of this is to better show the progress against the local action plans and where projects are being completed, as well as reducing duplication where projects may fulfil multiple actions under local action plans. The local action plans will also continue to be provided every 6 months, and the next update will be provided at the September 2026 meeting. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the floor to questions now. This is the opportunity for questions that won't count against speaking time. One moment. I will need to move the motion again as Councillor McLeod as the alternate. I require the primary representative. Yes, so I will move the motion. It has been now seconded by Councillor Holderness. Sorry, my apologies. I think we're all in order now. Questions? I have Councillor Foon.
Yeah, kia ora, Councillor Hayward, and thank you all. My question, and apologies, I'm just trying to find the agenda, but regarding the two major projects, can you just give me a bit more of an outline on timelines and the outcome we're trying to assess regarding the clean fill investigation and the future of residual waste disposal? That would be really helpful. Thank you. So just timeline, like what are we trying to get to by what date, and just in terms of the outcome we're after.
Okay, officers.
So for the clean fill investigation, we're aiming to have the report completed by the end of this year. And the aim is to do an options and gap analysis and look at, I guess, what options councils could support for the future of clean fill disposal in the region. And I might hand over for the residual waste.
With regard to the residual waste disposal project, which is the title is a little bit unfortunate because actually it's about future waste pathways. So it's really looking at where are we going as a region. So looking ahead, we've got currently, you would have heard in the media that Porirua City Council is consulting on the closure of Spicer in 2030, and obviously that will have impacts in both the Lower Hutt City Council with Silverstream landfill, but also probably Southern landfill in terms of Wellington. So looking ahead, what we are trying to do with that project is to work out, well, what's actually where do we need to go in the next 20 to 30 years? Because when it comes to a landfill, as looking at the example in Auckland, where the regional landfill up there has been through the consenting process for the last 10 to 12 years. So if there is a scenario that you can think of where, let's say, volumes increase further, or we're not very successful in terms of diverting waste away from landfills, we may only have about 20 to 25 years, maybe less, of landfill life left. So if the consenting or the design process takes 10 to 12 years, then we actually need to start looking at what the future is right now. And hence, this project is about future waste pathways. So what are the things we can do to divert more waste? How do we minimize the residual? But once you've done all those things, what's left? And there is likely to be quite a lot of waste that's going to be left over as residual waste that needs to be managed in some way. And that could be landfills, it could be thermal energy or waste to energy options. So this project is really looking at different scenarios and then working out a potential way forward, at least looking at the options, and then that will be reported back to this joint committee to at least give us a potential direction of travel. And it may also help inform the next waste management and minimisation plan in terms of what sort of targets we might be looking at and what are sort of the actions we actually need to undertake to deliver on more diversion away from landfill.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just one more question. Just if there's any sense of urgency, and by what you're saying, Ewan, there, we don't really have an urgency, like even to get a resource consent, but I guess I have concerns about this becoming urgent. So what pathways are available to officers to ramp this work up if we needed to do that?
At the moment, my view is that there's probably not a lot of urgency. Yes, Spicer is looking to close in 2030, so you could say there's some, it's definitely a topical area at the moment. But in terms of landfill life, there is still about 20, 25 years available. Now, that's why we're doing this work now rather than in 5 to 10 years when it actually would become urgent. So at the moment, we still have got plenty of time. So now we're looking at what are the scenarios, what are the future options looking like, not just in terms of disposal, but also how do we get more diversion. And one example here is that, for example, in Europe, there's increasingly acceptance that, separation at source is not the only game in town, and you probably can only go so far. So what other technologies are available to take this even further? And what's some of the operating context that we need to make that work? Because landfill disposal is still relatively cheap in New Zealand. So at the moment, we still got plenty of time. For now, the work is focused on data and modelling for another quarter or so, another 2-3 months. We're then looking at engaging a consultant to help us work through some of the technology options that are available globally, not just in New Zealand.
Okay, thank you. I might have another question later, Chair.
Okay, understood. Councillor Free, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, I'm new to this, so I hope my questions are not too silly. But I just wanted to know, with Spicer closing in 5 years' time, which actually isn't a long time, what is the options? I did read that, there's transfer stations and this and this and this, but ultimately, where is it envisaged that the rubbish will actually go?
I'll get you an answer for that. Officers, just respond.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So there are 3 landfills in the district. If we close, there are the other 2 landfills which are still available, plus a 3rd landfill north of here in Martin. That's the Bonnie Glen landfill.
So Martin and presumably Wellington City.
And the 2 landfills,
Valley.
Southern and Silverstream. Yeah.
And Silverstream. Okay. Yeah. Yes. The other question I had on a slightly different subject is just looking at the fence at the top of the cliff. I see we've got a desire to have a construction and demo processing facility somewhere by 2026. So how's that going?
Chloe, do you want to take?
Thanks, through the chair. Yep, the C&D processing facility is being set up by Wasteco and is located at 8 C and D Broken Hill Road in Porirua, and that should be open probably in April, end of March, start of April, with a ribbon cutting ceremony to come in a couple of months.
Lovely.
So I'll speak to that one just briefly. I know that there are members of this committee and others who went to the Waste Forum in Porirua a couple of weeks back, where they did a site visit of that location, which is just down the road from the entrance to the Spicer landfill, and they are proceeding on the construction to have that set up in place. Obviously, there was the expectation to have it done before the end of last year, but Christmases are always a challenging time for construction, let alone anything in Wellington, but we're glad to see it coming. Back to you, Councillor Free.
Yeah, just one more, a follow-up. So is it envisaged that, what is the processing going to be? Does it just chop it up and make it more acceptable for landfill, or is it something completely different? Does it divert it from landfill?
There's 3 large pieces of machinery that will work to separate the types of material that come in through allowing sorting to happen so that they can be split into the different grades and types of material they are, with off markets for recycling and reprocessing those materials to prevent them going to landfill.
Oh, brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Fern, your hand's still up. Do you want to take another go at the questions? I haven't got anybody else yet.
Great, thank you. Just the solid waste management and minimisation bylaw, I just want to make sure that we're all working together regarding the multi-unit So actually, first on that is a timeline for this committee and for our councils, just to understand through this triennium what and when we're up for looking at that. And then to understand how we're working together on multi-unit dwellings, noting we've got more housing, which is exciting, but we need to make sure we've got these waste management systems working together. And this is an opportunity to look at that. So 2 questions there. So I'll let you answer those before I go to the next one. Thank you.
Officers.
Through you, Chair. In terms of the construction and demolition waste management plans, which is the thing that we're working on regionally at the moment, officers are meeting every 2 weeks to talk about how we can do this as consistently as possible. There are some challenges around different websites and how we'll do it, but the ultimate aim is to be as consistent as possible, make sure that the information is clear, and that we try to roll this out as close together as possible around the region. The timeline for that is looking hopefully for around June, July this year, that we'll have something in place. There's discussions with brands and industry players as well.
Maybe just to follow up on this is Ewan from Hutt City Council.
Thanks, Ewan.
Because you asked the question around the multi-unit dwelling requirements in the bylaw. So just going back a couple of years when that was introduced, we were working on this regionally. And my understanding is that in all councils that have effectively multi-unit dwellings, in their area, that bylaw requirement is either already implemented or is in the process of, being embedded. So I've certainly for Hutt City Council, this has been now in place for a solid 3 years or so. Ultimately, it does depend a little bit on the priority of each council, how much focus they put on it. There tends to be fewer multi-unit dwellings, I guess, in the Wairarapa than perhaps in other areas. But there has been a lot of effort being put into, regional coordination and making sure that there is consistency. And the same applies to the event waste management and minimisation plan requirements, which has also been in place now for probably the last 2 or 3 years.
Great. So just to confirm, are we needing to review or update that the whole bylaw again during this triennium, or are we working on implementation?
Just to answer that, yes, we are working on implementation. And at the moment, there is no need to review the bylaw again unless a council decides that they want to review it earlier. So we're working on a 10-year timeframe at the moment, which means when the bylaw came in 2021, we effectively have to start reviewing it probably around 29, 30, depending on priorities at that point.
No, that's great. Thank you. I heave a sigh of relief. Thank you for that. 10 years is great. Hand back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ayling, you're next up.
Morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Perfect. I just had a question on the organic waste management major project. I wonder if officers could talk to the delay and in the procurement and the risks that has in terms of us meeting our targets.
With regard to the project on organics, which is a regional project it's a sub-regional project between Wellington City Council and Hutt City Council, but it will obviously have potential flow-on effects on other councils if that project results in the establishment of a processing facility. There's been a number of delays over the last year and a half, and some of it stems from, without pointing fingers, by the way, that some of it stems from Wellington City's challenges around their long-term plan. Enough said. And also some delays in terms of the procurement and in terms of the learnings from the stage 3. There's a 4-stage process, and in stage 3 we obviously had some suppliers come through with options. But what is also interesting, what didn't come through, so we needed to make some clarifications in the last stage. Now, the last stage has been carried out. That closed in December 2025. We're still going through the evaluation process, so the panel is just about to report back with their final recommendations to an oversight group, and then there will be, it will become public what the option is or not. So in terms of next steps, clearly this project does have implications for other councils in terms of the WMP action around a reduction in the amount of organic waste going to landfills. I think it's probably fair to say that it's looking increasingly unlikely that that WMP objective can be achieved simply based on the fact that even with processing kicking in, say, 2 years from now, assuming there's an option, and Wellington and Hutt City Council rolling out a curbside collection service, which is still subject to some decision making, that means effectively that by the end of the WMMP, which is, what's the end date? 2029, it's pretty unlikely that by that time we would have reduced organic waste by that amount, even with those collection systems kicking in. So there's definitely a risk that it won't be achieved. So that also means that there is really there's certainly a sense of we need to keep working on options and not just wait for Wellington and Hutt to kind of sort it out, if you like.
Thank you for that. That was really helpful and slightly concerning, but thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions that dig a bit deeper into some of the themes of this work. The first one's about waste management in emergencies, and this work stream has been certainly geared towards planning for what happens when we have a catastrophic emergency, a state of emergency in our region, and roads are munted and all of that kind of stuff, huge amounts of waste. However, we had an interesting example a couple of weeks ago of a lower level disruption across the region, and it was quite interesting to note what happened in response. Just for example, what happened with green waste to landfills. Our council, Hutt City Council, announced that we would accept green waste for free at our landfill for a period of a week, which comes at a cost to our ratepayers. And it was soon all over the region's internets, and people were driving across the region to bring green waste to Lower Hutt to dispose of it for free. I think a little bit after that, Porirua announced it wouldn't do the same, so certainly Porirua people were coming. And then a little bit after that, Wellington announced it would do the same. And I was very surprised to see the lengths people would go to literally drive their waste across the region and wait in a queue for hours to save maybe $10 on a gate fee. But my question is, is there any coordination in that kind of situation, which isn't a catastrophic emergency? However, you did see some quite perverse behaviour going on with regards to green waste in particular, seemingly because our councils weren't coordinated on how we responded to that.
Officers?
It's fair to say that coordination could be improved in relation to those sort of events, so we certainly will need to take that away. Looking ahead at, those sort of events that might happen again, like big storm events like this. When it comes to the emergency management, that emergency project, it very much is geared towards very large-scale disruptive events, earthquakes, tsunamis, that sort of type of, or big events like what happened in Hawke's Bay just recently. And certainly the team has been in touch with them to download on some of those learnings. And one of the learnings, for example, is that don't wait to sort out contracts until the day it hits. You need to kind of have your ducks in a row beforehand, so you can literally call up a contractor and say, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to set up a temporary transfer station or whatever it might be. So we're working on that. That's kind of where the focus is. But also, it's not just about how do we manage that amount of waste that comes in. It's also about okay, there is actually no way you can suddenly accommodate another 500,000 tonnes of waste that might result as a result of one of those events. So we really need to think about resource recovery in that context as well. And that might mean separating out, sort of the organic material from inert clean fill type of materials, just to actually protect some of the landfill space that we do have, and to potentially divert as much as we can. But again, that needs plans set up in advance. We need to think about it beforehand. What does a sort of a temporary holding area look like? What does a contractor have to do to actually make that happen? So that's what we will expect to come out of that project to help the region be prepared for one of those events.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was just a good illustration of how it doesn't have to be a massive event to have a large impact. I mean, there could have been one slip in the entire region, and if that slip happen to close the road to Silverstream landfill, that has quite a dramatic impact just from one small event. My other question, and it was to do with something I read in the media recently, in Lower Hutt's action plan, and I'm sure it was discussed at a higher level when this plan was developed, there's reference to tikanga Māori perspectives. Interestingly, recently, in news about wastewater plants, I think I saw for the first time ever a direct statement from Te Atiawa that they would prefer for all bio-waste to be disposed on land and not into water. I've certainly heard concerns before about what ends up in the Waifetu stream or in other places in our waterways, and have seen other iwi say similar things about disposal to land. I just wonder, that seems like a very high level discussion with iwi that again could have quite significant impacts in our direction for how we deal with wastewater and its byproducts. So are we having conversations on that very high level? The local action plan for Lower Hutt is much lower level than that, about how we can have support some tikanga Māori based initiatives related to the circular economy. That sounds like some pretty small activity kind of stuff, but on a very high level, do we have a steer from our iwi on high level principles for waste disposal?
Probably can't speak for all the councils in this regard, but I'm certainly not aware of any of those discussions happening in the solid waste space. They probably are occurring in terms of trade waste and, the Three Waters discussions, but it's not something that I'm aware of in terms of the solid waste management and minimisation. And I guess it's a bit of an area, it's a bit of a grey area, because once biosolids are obviously dried or sludge is still wet, it comes to the landfill, but the origin of that waste is in the Three Waters. So we'd have to take that away and follow up to find out whether it's being discussed or not.
Can I just sub just quickly in on that? There is, though, if there is a resilience, a requirement on dumping of dry solids, that still requires a landfill and B, daily cover as well. And if there's volumes that are declining because of our efforts in trying to reduce waste ending up in landfill, that does have a relevance to our councils in terms of the operation of existing landfills as well as our regional plan, correct?
Yes, that's correct, absolutely. And interestingly, it will certainly be a challenge for Te Akiwai, the new water agency, in terms of the sludge that is generated in Porirua, given that Spicer might not be available post 2030. And the sludge volumes are quite significant. We're talking several thousand tonnes of material per year, especially if it's wet. And there are challenges in terms of landfill disposal. So, for example, for Hutt City Council, we don't normally accept wet sludge unless it's an emergency. So that will present some challenges for areas that don't have drying facilities already.
Okay. Councillor G, you're done? Okay, going to next on the list, Councillor McLeod.
Kia ora tātou. Thanks for allowing me to ask a question. It follows on from Councillor Mitchell, actually, around tikanga Māori, because mine was going to be around, have iwi been involved with the discussion in an adverse event, given how involved they are in the community, particularly in an adverse event, but also have iwi been involved with putting this WMMP together, and how does this WMMP impact on them and their guardianship? Kia ora.
I'll let officers answer, but I may have a brief comment at the end of it as well, so go ahead.
I'm not able to answer the first question around to what degree or are they involved in the emergencies project, because it is very much focused on setting up areas to receive waste in an emergency. However, there is a regional debris management plan, and my understanding is that iwi and Mana Whenua were involved at that point. So that work was led by, I think it was Remo, the regional emergency management organisation. In terms of the WMP, yes, the answer is yes. Mana Whenua have been involved when the plan was developed 3 years ago.
I will add just briefly and comment into that. In the previous triennium, there was a lot of conversation by members of the committee around how to bring Mana Whenua to the table to have that part of the conversation. At that stage, it wasn't Mana Whenua felt it wasn't suitable for them to be in that part of the conversation. We will always want to improve that relationship, and if it comes at a certain time that they do want to be a part of the table more directly, we would be welcome to that, I would think, certainly from my perspective as chair. However, it is also mindful that as was the case when we did the review of our plan in the previous triennium, their involvement in the development and feedback into that plan that came back to individual councils was certainly at the forefront. Any other questions on that? Okay, going next to we've got Councillor Fern, you're back.
Thanks, Councillor Hayward. Mine just comes back to the organic processing corridor. And I guess I'm always conscious that we've got two levers going. One is this regional committee in the WMMP, which we are trying to achieve goals, but we've also got individual councils making decisions at different times. And so I guess what is, or can there be a process for updating this committee as soon as decisions are made? Because I'm understanding they're going to start rolling out reasonably quickly. And I think whatever those outcomes are will impact on this committee and our priorities. So it's about the timing and making sure we're across it to be able to respond.
It's a reasonable question. Officers, response? It's coming.
Okay.
Councillor Fern, do you mind just clarifying the question? So are you referring to updating for potentially the terms of reference of the joint committee, or is it about updating the priorities that we might be looking at, assuming that food and green organics collection service is implemented?
It's more around probably the process for informing this committee. Like, I think what I'm doing is asking as soon as we're getting an outcome that this committee can be updated, but also that it is taken into account for the next reporting, so that if officers are thinking we need to relook at our priorities, that is brought to this council's, this committee's attention.
Yep, absolutely, to confirm that. So that organics major project report will come back to you every quarter, and depending on where we are with decisions, that information will come back to you.
Right, thank you.
Nothing more on that one, Councillor Fern?
A lot, but I think maybe in our discussion later.
Sorry for laughing. These are fair questions. I'll go to Councillor Free. Unfortunately, your microphone is muted.
Okay, sorry about that. I just wonder if there's any scope when we have storms to have sort of to go out to people in various communities and offer chipping, rather than having every man and his dog bringing their branches into a central landfill.
Such an individual council.
I'm afraid I probably can't answer this from a regional perspective, but that is a matter that is of effectively an operational concern for each of the council areas to look at. I mean, there may well be better coordination between the councils, but whether or not a council wishes to offer that is ultimately up to them, and there will obviously also be cost implications for ratepayers, because when that service is offered, that money needs to come from somewhere.
Well, yes. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Sorry, what's your question format here? I've had my mic on for about 10 minutes.
So I haven't seen your hand go up, so I didn't know if you were.
Well, okay, so
speaking.
we've got to put our hand up.
Yeah,
do we?
because well, at least it give me indication that you're going to want to speak.
Oh, no, our system, sorry, our council system is we push the button, it comes up at your table. This is the first time we've had a meeting here, so I'm just checking out what the
We're
system is.
lo-fi, Councillor Halliday, so please go ahead and ask your questions.
That's cool. Look, I just want to touch base on something Councillor Foon said as well, and also tying in some comments around the organics. From what I've just heard from around the organics is that the Wellington Lower Hutt solution might not be a go, and they might be looking at potential. Well, that's you just said it's on. We don't know where the solution's going to go with that, which I have no issue with. What I have an issue with is whether we're getting information if there are issues coming through quickly enough to other council officers or to this committee as well. If we need to pivot with regards to some of these key deliverables, and I know that there are challenges and there are challenges that come up during a triennium that are unexpected or even fiscal restraint. What's a system for us having a look at even reviewing some of these if we need to pivot and change around delivery? Because I don't want to wait till the next plan for some of these big projects to then be looked at and addressed if they're not going forward. If we need to be looking at some bespoke approaches, that's great. If that's what we need to look at, then our officers would like to know that in advance, so that, or as soon as possible, so that we can start work in those areas as well, or start discussion around what we are looking at for an outcome.
Officers, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I can respond to that. So one of the challenges with the Wellington and Hutt City collaborative project around food and green organics is that we're going through a procurement process. So until that has been completed, we're just not at liberty to be able to share kind of where we're up to and what the supplier might be or not be. So what I have said earlier is that the evaluation panel is currently in the final stage of deliberation. We'll be agreeing on a decision on which supplier or any supplier we will or won't support. That's really up to the panel to decide. They'll come back to an oversight group, and at that point, it will then come back to the councils. And then after that point, we can also share it with the wider region in terms of what decisions have been made. Until that has happened, we can't share that information because we're subject to probity and other requirements.
Cool.
But I can certainly give you assurance that as soon as information is able to be made public, we can share that with the other councils.
Look, even ideas on timeframes can be useful, so that it's just not a big vacuum of information. Would be appreciated, but that's cool. No, that's fine. And also, I guess that bleeds into also things like Wellington's got the construction and demolition on hold pending prioritisation. These are big projects. Are they potentially going to go forward as such? Because again, we put our hands up to do these things. If again there needs to be a change on approach at some point, I appreciate it would need to be addressed, but we're in progress. We want to see results. We want to see timeframes with regards to if there's a hold up. Okay, what is the hold up, and when are things going to move forward again? And if they aren't going to, and I guess that answers that big question: is if we've hit a brick wall and they can't go forward in that way, can we sort of then have conversations around what are alternative solutions?
Do officers want to respond to that?
Sure, through you, Chair. That's a local action plan, I think, that you're referring to for Wellington City Council.
Yeah.
Around the future of construction and demolition waste. So there's no intention to drop that project, but there are limited staff numbers, so we do need to make sure that we're prioritising the work. That project has been scoped up. It's a reasonable way down the path. It's just waiting to see when it can start. So I think it's fair to say there is an intention to do it. It's important work, and we've heard that from this committee around the importance of C&D and getting it out of our landfills.
Okay, yep. Perhaps in the project update, maybe a little bit more around that, because it appears to me that it's on hold and looking at the recostings and all those sorts of things. They're big. They're the sorts of things that derail projects. Those sorts of things. So, yep, just steering it. We'll just see how that comes across in the future.
No more questions, Councillor Halliday?
No, all good.
Okay. Councillor Clark, is that your hand up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Cool. Just responding to that comment really about being able to pivot. I guess the thing that's top of mind that has been brought to the table is the ability to do some work around the emergency waste management plan, which is very clear that is proceeding. And I guess, from our point of view in the Wairarapa, where we've had quite some significant impact, I think that's a really important piece of work, and I look forward to seeing the work that comes out of that. It's clearly an issue with increasing weather events across the whole region, so I guess I would see that as a priority.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Any other questions? I have my own ones, so I've just been waiting for everybody else to finish putting theirs in. I'm going to go now then. First of all, I guess just to reiterate that part of the challenge, I guess, from a regional perspective is that these local action plans do rely upon each of the individual councils taking steps, having it costed. Usually this is done through annual and long-term plans. So there's a bit of time in this as well. So is it right to say that our ability to pivot is limited by each council's ability to put this into their own local long-term plans and annual plans?
Yes, that would be correct. Ultimately, they are subject to the priorities of each individual council, and the action plans in the WMP are a point in time. They don't, and the WMP doesn't necessarily talk much about prioritisation, which happens later. The other thing is that many councils, you might have staff members leaving, and then you do need to reprioritise them to see what you can resource. So we just need to be cognizant of that as well when it comes to those implementation of the action plans, the local action plans.
Okay. My next question is, owing to the fact that there are, with both Wellington and Hutt City reports coming back for those respective councils with regards to food and organic waste, curbside collection and processing solutions, and if that there's a risk that if not, that we still may not be able to achieve our plans goals around organic waste reduction, would that be mitigated somewhat if the other councils in the metropolitan area, I'm thinking Porirua and Upper Hutt, were also part of that program and jumped on board after the leadership of Hutt and Wellington City? Would that mitigation mean that we could achieve that goal?
Just to clarify, so when I made a comment earlier about the WMP organic target being at risk, this is mainly related to the fact that in order to get a reduction in the amount of organic waste going to landfill, you need to first have that service operating, and probably operating for some time, because in the first year there's usually teething issues that you have to work through. The community still needs to come on board. So everything going perfectly, and let's say you have a service operating by 2027 or by 2028 with new processing in place, curbside collections running, that only leaves about a year to actually achieve the target in the WMP. And so that's what I was really alerting to. There is a risk that even with everything going perfectly to plan and Wellington and Hutt rolling out a service in the next 2 to 3 years, there's a real risk that we won't achieve those targets. So hence, it's relying on other councils to also take action. So coming back to your question now, if following the procurement process and assuming there's a clearer way forward on organics processing, that might well present an opportunity for other councils to reconsider their own plans. And if they do come on board, obviously it makes it more likely to achieve organic reduction targets in the future, even if that doesn't happen right within this timeframe of the WMP.
Okay. And my last question is, obviously, there is another context that's sitting over this as well, and it is the future of services and the regional organisation of councils across the region in response to the central government's positioning around Greater Wellington Regional Council. Shout out to you, Councillor Free. And so what steps do we take as individual councils in coordination and being cognizant of that particular issue, especially with regards to any harmonisation of services that come as a consequence of that.
At this stage, we haven't got any details to share, but we've certainly, as officers, asked that question around what is intended when it comes to the potential for amalgamation, what implications that might have, particularly for the waste services area. So I would suggest that at the moment there isn't a lot of detail available, but assuming that there is a separate project or initiative underway between those councils, it would be fair to say that the waste area is certainly a sector that would be part of that consideration and to be looked at, given that it's got clearly some regional, there's benefits to better regional coordination.
Thank you. I'm going to consider that we've covered all the questions on this item. Thank you all for the questions. Also, thank you very much to the officers for responding to it. I'm happy for people to give comment if they want to take some time to take comment, but I know that we've had a couple already, last chance for comments. Sorry, Councillor Mitchell. Well, that's what I'm saying is debate is comment, so you feel free to, that's the time for that.
I'd just like to make a few general comments. And to acknowledge that there are some elected members who are new to this particular committee. I was new to this committee in the last triennium when this plan was just being finalised, and I just wanted to comment because I similar to everyone else, look at the plan and worry about our ability to meet our targets. I don't think I've seen such kind of rapid change in the political sphere as in that past few years. This plan was adopted under a previous government that had its own ambitious targets for waste minimisation and had required councils to implement a number of activities which the new government came in no longer required councils to do. So our targets and activities were set in a particular environment, and the environment has changed considerably. And some of our councils have already cancelled things that the plan said they would do based on the government's changes. So that's one thing to be mindful of. Also, of course, we've got rates capping being signalled, and that in itself and the financial challenges of councils in general has also shifted considerably in those few years. When our council, Hutt City Council, does return to a discussion about FOGO, it's in a very different financial environment to when we first agreed that this was a wonderful thing for us to do. We've recently released a targeted operating model report, which signals in order to get down within rates caps, potentially some quite significant cuts to service provision in our communities, the stuff that really hurts, libraries and pools and things like that. So those things will be weighing in on our future decisions about FOGO. I think for me, I've just had to appreciate, even before the end of the last triennium, that we all signed up to an intent, and we need to, acknowledge that our councils need to continue making their best efforts, whatever those are, towards those targets, which we probably aren't going to meet, but certainly towards the high-level ambitions of the plan, which is to move towards circularity in our waste systems and diverting waste from landfill. So just some high-level comments from me. The context has changed quite a lot, and it's interesting now to be I think we're in year 3 of a 6-year plan, but the landscape has changed so dramatically in just those first couple of years that we need to continue with our best efforts on a high level, moving towards those high level gains, and recognise that all of these things listed in the plan 3 years ago aspirationally may not happen, some of them, but we need to keep heading in the right direction. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Councillor Foon.
Thank you, Chair. I must say that I'm the eternal optimist, but I have to back Councillor Mitchell up. It is feeling like quite a different landscape on many levels. But what I did want to point out today was that I do have concerns about, you know, our contaminated soil and finding other places for this, or systems rather than just landfilling, and also really looking into the residual waste disposal. I hear from officers that we're maybe not in an emergency place yet, but I am becoming more and more concerned about that. Particularly for, you know, communities in Wellington. Our landfill is down a small road with much urban housing, and the trucks rattling past there are really hard for that community, let alone living next to the landfill. So I think I just want to point out that those two things are concerning me, and I will be leaning in on that, and also want to acknowledge the good kōrero around our emergency waste process. I think that is becoming more and more pressing. So yes, thank you for the kōrero today, and do think we need to keep agile and being able to reprioritise or find ways to do that as and when needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fern. Anybody else before I go to the closing comments? Councillor Halliday.
Yeah, look, I just might throw into that mix as well, because just want to clarify my comment a little bit, and it sort of ties into this. Two aspects to what we do here, as far as I can see, is that we have our own individual council work programs and the work that we're wanting to do, and the goals and aspirations that we want to achieve. And then we have our regional waste minimalisation forum, which is creating a regional approach to some of these bigger questions. So there's a lot of stuff that, you know, in regards to Andy's comment around the change in the environment, is but we can pivot, you know, with regards to those smaller aspects within our own organisations. I guess what I was touching on before is if there has been such a significant change in the landscape, then do we need to be re-looking at some of these higher-end projects that are being delivered on a regional basis, and just see how they're fitting into the current setting. And look, flagging, maybe it might be something to be looking at coming early on in the coming next election cycle too. If there's significant change there as well, might be something that we need to factor in around things too. I don't know how we do that, but it might be something. It wasn't an issue when we were putting this together. It just might be something to take on board as I guess what I'm skirting around is I don't want to go through a whole review of things, you know, and a big piece of work around that. Just there's some tweaking, or there's some priority changes, or there's some funding changes that have meant that some councils have had to make significant side steps away from perhaps what was initially being looked at as being the pathway forward. If that's the case, then let's front it. You know, let's have those conversations, and let's rather than these things being packed away and hoping things are going to change further on down the track, because the idea is to get results. If we're not going to meet our targets, I don't have a problem with that as long as I know the why, and that we're perhaps put some other targets in place because they're easier to achieve, or we can achieve them, not forgetting where we're wanting to go as such. I take on board what everyone's saying, and it's just maybe that's that, like I said, that pivot or that fluid, how we can build that into things as well as we move forward. And maybe with our new chair, that might be one of those wonderful tasks that he's got to manage to shoehorn into the process as such.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday. Any other comments before I go to close? Okay. So I think where I've come to in this item is it is always sobering to read these reports and note that there's a tremendous amount of work being done, but also that there are challenges which are emerging, you know, government changes. There are also right here in Porirua challenges as well around the consequences of inaction over a long period of time, which is leading us to have a conversation about Spicer landfill with unpalatable choices, all of them expensive. And that to me highlights the reason why the coordination across the regions is so vital, because the opportunity cost to literally for people's pockets is significant if we do not take actions and show leadership locally. However, that is also why we are held accountable by those who vote us in to justify our actions. If they are not happy with that, they know exactly how to solve that solution. One of the words that I think it needs to be mentioned a bit as well is equity. I'm not sure, and I do not want to get into a political conversation in my role as chair, but I do want to point out that for some of those who live in our regions, the choices that they have are not as easy as it is for others because of barriers of distance, but particularly cost. Our role as in dealing with each of these regional plans, these local action plans across the region, is to, in my view, make sure that no one is left behind in terms of making a commitment, making a contribution towards reducing waste. It's certainly something that is mindful from my perspective going forward, and that is why I am even more committed to wanting to see action on waste reduction for my part here in Porirua. I hope that committee members will also see that within their own local contexts as well. Thank you for comments. Kia ora koutou. I'm going to close it and we're going to have the recommendations being now put to the motion. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions? I believe that's carried. Thanks, everybody. Let's go to item 7.2, Wellington Region Waste Forum Terms of Reference. So I've had discussions with Councillor Mitchell, who has highlighted there's a couple of proposed amendments that he wanted to change, and I've discussed this with officers, so I'm going to make it as a chair's recommendation. So the recommendations would be different in that, where is it? Item 1, receive the report, is exactly the same as before. The second recommendation is to agree in principle to the direction of change for the Wellington Regional Waste Forum signalled in the updated terms of reference. The point is that it's about the agree in principle. And that is the difference from the item on notice. And then 3 is to note that there is further work to be done to formally disestablish the member organisation operating under the current terms of reference, which will be undertaken by officers in the upcoming period. So I'll allow Councillor Mitchell, I'll waive my right to speak on the motion, the rationale behind it as chair, but I'll allow Councillor Mitchell to speak to the point of it. It does not require a seconder. And then we'll go to officers if there are any questions on that.
Okay. So the Wellington Region Waste Forum is a member organisation. It's been running for a very long time and has a fairly murky history. I don't think there's anyone in the room that understands the exact nature of the organisation. It is not a registered incorporated society. It is not a registered charity. It is registered with the IRD and has a bank account. It does operate under terms of reference, which have been agreed by its members traditionally at a triennial general meeting, the last of which must have been in 2024, I think. I've been chair of the Waste Forum since 2020, so I did question when this paper came through the ability of this group here to make any changes to that organisation's terms of reference, which essentially was proposed, and you can see in the old terms of reference that those terms of reference don't allow particular changes to be made. So that's why I've kind of raised this flag here. In practice, this has been certainly in recent years an initiative led by our councils and officers of our councils. I have been the chair, and I have certainly chaired those triennial general meetings and emceed actual Waste Forum events, but there's been a diminishing role for the chair, no active involvement really from other members of the organisation. So I personally, I'm on board with this what is proposed as a direction of change, which is essentially to do away with the formality of that organisation and make this an activity of our council officers. Hopefully I've summarised that well enough. However, there are a few formal steps to be taken if that's what we are to do, to under its terms of reference, that organisation has a procedure to go through to essentially disestablish itself and hand itself over to council officers. That's probably all I can say as an introductory statement. I don't know if officers have anything to add. we can, between us, hopefully answer any questions anyone has. Yeah.
Officers, do you want to comment on that? And then we'll go to questions for everyone.
That sums it up really well, Councillor Mitchell.
Okay. I'll go with, did you want to go first, Councillor McLeod? Did you had your hand up earlier, or was there a... Okay, so then I'll go to Councillor Holderness first, and then Councillor Halliday.
Thank you. Thanks for the context, Councillor Mitchell, because I did have a few questions around that. Whether or not it was in fact the purview of this particular committee to be able to make the changes to the forum. And even with your amendment there, I'm still a little unclear on that. But I do want to ask, because the noting that the original Waste Forum had its own advocacy role independently of councils, if it then comes under more this committee's purview, and I note that in this particular proposed terms of reference, under the purpose, the advocacy piece has been removed as an independent one. I wonder how that works with the role of actually strengthening the forum, which is the aim.
I can only again speak to my period on the Waste Forum, during which time the forum hasn't been doing advocacy work. The forum really operates as a really brilliant information sharing forum for the waste sector. So in terms of its membership, and Ewan and I were talking about this earlier, because in 2019 or 2020 when I became chair of the forum, it was still very much a member organisation with membership fees and different levels of membership from memory, and quite complicated. However, its members included councils, waste companies and some NGOs. Since then, the membership fee was essentially, the membership is now free, which, as I said to you, means presumably all those people are still members, even though they haven't paid to be members in the intervening time. In terms of your question about what this group can do, I think it can do what's there, kind of agree in principle that where the officers or where we want to take this forum is the right place. However, under those old terms of reference, it's up to the forum to agree to dissolve itself through a process, to agree that that's a better outcome than continuing with the current structure, governance structure, formal structure. And I don't think the members will oppose that. However, my personal view, which I raised with you, is that we need to wrap this up properly, so 3 years from now no one can say, well, this external group decided to dissolve our organisation and did so improperly. So it's really about going through a proper process to achieve what this paper had asked us to do today.
I'll go to Councillor Halliday, then to Councillor McLeod.
Yeah, look, I have to apologise, actually. I've had a bit of a brain fart here. I thought this was terms of reference for General Committee, so I was going to go into the advocacy thing as well. But what you've just said, Andy, makes perfect sense with regards to the disestablishing forum generally getting here, because the forum has sort of moved into that forum mode, doing a fantastic job, by the way. Really enjoyed the last two forums. And I'm picking the advocacy aspects comes to this committee with regards to what we're looking at doing from an advocacy perspective, whatever that might be. So in other words, forum's got no responsibility in that advocacy space with regards to speaking for councils or whatever. That would be the job of this committee, whatever we decide that would be. Is that correct?
I'm happy for you to answer, but I'll follow up any additional point afterwards, and then I'll come back.
Yeah, sorry, that was an additional point I was intended to make, but forgot to just now, that I think this committee is set up to have an advocacy role, and it's a lot easier for this committee to do so, noting that the members of the forum are a very disparate group, as I mentioned, not only councils but also waste companies, and to get a shared view on anything waste related from that very disparate group, you're probably not going to get as strong a advocacy piece out of that group anyway. And as I was saying, in my time there's been been none done or proposed through the Waste Forum. I don't know about prior to that. And I think this forum's been running at least 30 years, as far as I know, and quite possibly it was set up in, a very different environment where there was felt a need for people not only to share information and network and start collaborating on things, but to have some advocacy voice to central government or whatever it is. But I just feel the need's not there at the moment.
No, I agree.
Either. Yeah.
The only thing I would add as well is that the forum in any incarnation would never have precluded the capability of any NGO, company or council to advocate directly or in conjunction in a coordinated fashion. Councillor McLeod.
Kia ora, thank you very much. I'm a former chair of the Wellington Regional Waste Forum. I wasn't able to carry on my chairpersonship because I was removed from the forum. So when I was a city councillor. So I have a lot of history because I was involved with the forum for quite some years before I was chair. And if I'm able to share the fact that I'm actually really disappointed to see this. I'm really disappointed to see this, that this group feels that it's in a position to change the terms of reference or to offer a new terms of reference and to ask the forum to formally disestablish. Given the history of what we've been able to achieve and the independent advocacy voice that we have had in the past, I think it's a real shame that the nature of the forum has changed. And yeah, I'm hearing why the change. However, there's some independence. There will be a lot of independence lost, and it really was quite independent. The council laws that were involved and the council staff that were involved even though they were chosen from their councils, they weren't chosen in a way to be able to be that council's kind of voice. It was almost like we were there to have the discussion at a regional level and then to take that discussion back to our councils, particularly as advocates to our own councils around some of the really good stuff that's happening in our region, but also because I was also involved with some advocacy work to central government from that group, we had to agree as a group for that to happen. And it was also agreed that it was outside of the fact that we weren't actually representing the councils, that we were members of. I think that the Waste Forum, you're right, has been going for a long time. I think principally the long-time person that was involved with helping to run that was an officer at the Hutt City Council, but she wasn't doing it because she wasn't appointed to that role because she was an officer at the Hutt City Council. It was one of her passions, and also one of the other members of the group was Lawrence, who is a real e-recycling warrior, if I'm to put it in that term, and so the two of them and those of us that have been involved for a long time, some who are no longer councillors, Jill Greathead from the Wairarapa, we did a lot of really quite solid work there, and I just think we need to take some of that into account to try and keep that independence and what they're able to achieve with industry and NGOs and other people in the waste advocacy space. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor McLeod. Is there anybody else who wants to talk to this one? I don't see anybody online. I'm going to speak to this and then we'll go to a vote. My recollections of the Waste Forum over the previous two triennium, and now this is coming into my third, was that, and I want to start this by saying this should not be seen as any finger pointing or reflection on any individual who's been involved in the Waste Forum during this period of time, because it would demean their mana, and I would not allow that to happen in this context. I felt that the earlier forums were not as well as attended as I had hoped. There may be because issues from time to time may come up that heighten the activism of individuals who want to use the Waste Forum as a mechanism to advocate for change within councils or central government. But that always will depend upon the nature of the day, the issues of the day, the role of individual actors who are participating. It would be, I think, a bad thing for people in this region if the participation of those forums was depleted and not meeting communities where they are at that point in time because of the terms of reference that are sitting in that period of time. Now, I recently chaired the last Waste Forum, and I've been to a previous one under the new format and have seen an improvement in terms of the participation by stakeholders and participating in it. I think one of those might be because of the barrier of cost has been removed, although it's not necessarily not necessarily obvious to me that was part of the commitment of being involved in the Waste Forum. We want to reduce barriers to have meaningful conversations, to share information with stakeholders. We do want to be able to make sure that our committee members and councils are engaging with community to reflect back what they are doing on the ground and the needs that they have to actually improve waste minimisation across the region. So there is still a role, I think, for the forum. But as I kind of alluded to in my comment before, our advocacy role has never disappeared whether you have a waste forum or not. It may mean more pressure on us as a committee. It may mean more pressure placed on councils to advocate and reflect back those issues with a council. And I'm mindful that a bit of agility is always a good thing in terms of political change and political action. Whether the forum fits that right now is probably best served by how many people are turning up under the previous format to the current one. I'm happy with the proposed changes I've put as the Chair's recommendation to not overstep our responsibilities as this committee in terms of the Waste Forum terms of reference and also the potential for disestablishment. But I do think that the terms of reference currently that are under on notice do reflect what is actually happening at the moment, and we probably should have terms of reference that actually reflect what is happening in those meetings currently. I did have last call. Do you want to? I mean, happy for you to do have a comment now, but I'm going to go to the vote immediately after.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah. Thanks. I'd just like to come back to the basic principle of these amendments, which is that it isn't for this group to decide the future of the Waste Forum, it's for the Waste Forum to decide, and certainly appreciate the history. I think one thing that needs to be acknowledged is that a lot of people have moved on from this organisation. I was voluntold on my way to my first Waste Forum that I was going to be nominated as chair as a brand new city councillor in Lower Hutt. I just note that in the last triennium, no one else from around the region even put their hand up to be the deputy chair of the organisation, and that it's been a fairly low attendance by elected members nominated by their councils to represent them at that forum. So, yeah, it is a changing context. I would just note too that it has been a part of the work program for this joint committee here and for the WMMP, which is why we are discussing it today. There has been a work program in place for officers to look at the structure and the way the Waste Forum operates, which is exactly what they've done. So just like to acknowledge that that work has been done under the mandate of this committee, but this committee doesn't have a mandate to tell the Waste Forum what to do. That needs to go through its own process, which is proposed here. It is a member organisation. What that member organisation really needs is for members to put their hands up to take it in a different direction if that's what's wanted and put new energy into it, but that certainly isn't what's happened over the last 6 years. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Okay, I see hands up from Councillor Clark and Councillor Foon. You're putting me in the bind, committee members, because normally the process is that as chair, I get the last word before we go to the motion. That would be good process. So I'm mindful that I don't want to constrain debate, but especially for anyone who hasn't spoken yet. So I'll allow these two speakers to speak. But please, the lesson for this is, if you want to speak and you hear me saying last call, get your hands up quicker. Kate the pie there? All right. Let's start with Councillor Clark, and then we'll go to Councillor Foon.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly. I'm working on my phone. It's a little tricky, but I'm hearing the conversation and just wondering, is there not the opportunity to just have something in the terms of reference that say this group may have the opportunity to advocate, according to, kind of the group discussion or the group need or something, so that the possibility is in there rather than just not having that in there. That's all.
Okay. We might want the resolution of those types of situations is that you would put an amendment up to deal with that specific thing. But I'll leave that to you, to whether or not that is the course of action you want to take. But I think the fact that you've said it is an important point in and of itself. I'll go to Councillor Foon.
Chair, apologies, and it is difficult online. And look, all I wanted to say, I considered taking my hand down, but I did want to back Councillor Mitchell up, but actually really thank him for his work, for chairing the forum for the last 2 triennium. But I agree the new format worked really well, and I would love to see that continue. So I'm supporting the amendments today. Thank you.
Okay, so we've had we've got a chair's recommendation. If we don't have an amendment, then I'm going to go straight to the vote on the chair's recommendation, which is up on the screen as is. Councillor Clark, if you wanted to move and seek a seconder then for proposed wording to amend, I'm giving you the opportunity. Sorry, Councillor Mitchell.
If I could make a quick comment, your amended chair's recommendation no longer actually requires us to agree to the wording of the terms of reference, just the principle, the direction of movement here. And you and I had talked about that before the meeting, that if indeed the Waste Forum does get properly wrapped up, then terms of reference can come back to this committee to be agreed upon in future rather than being agreed upon today.
Councillor Clark, does that resolve or tranquillise your concerns for this moment?
Yes, I think that's a good pathway.
Okay. So I'm going to close up debate. I've already had my comment, not going to go over it again. Thank you to everyone for contributing. I'm going to go to the vote now. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Abstentions? We are carried. Well done, everybody. And I believe that brings us to the end of this meeting. We will do our karakia now, and then we'll have our informal session afterwards. So can we bring up the karakia? Oh, there it goes. Okay. Our karakia whakamutunga. Toru whā, kia horo te marino, kia whakapapa paunamu te moana, he huarahi mā tātou e te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou, katoa, hui e, tae ki e.
Tae ki e.
Thanks, everybody.